My name is Jon Gitelson. Grew up in Mount Kisco, New York, which is a suburb of New York City. Grew up in that town. When I was 18, I left for college, and I got my degree from a place called Marlborough College, which was this really magical experimental school. But afterwards, I really caught the photo bug, so I went to graduate school for photography. I moved to Chicago. I went to graduate school at Columbia College, and then lived in Chicago for about 10 years, and then relocated to Keene State in 2010. It was my junior year, and I was studying this writer named Albert Camus, and he writes a lot about the role of the artist. And I thought to myself, if I'm focusing so much of my learning on this guy who's talking so much about the importance of art, I should probably take an art class. So I took a photography class, and immediately, first week or two, I was like, holy cow, I can actually make what I see in my head. And the first work I really fell in love with was street photography. So the idea of going out in the street, not knowing what I was going to find, and trying to capture something happening. And then in the 4 years in between undergrad and grad, I just knew that was all I wanted to do. So by the time I went to graduate school, I knew photography was what I wanted to do. I tend to identify as an artist, not as a photographer. So my practice, even though it started with photography, I work in all kinds of media. Public art. I've made web-based projects. The way that I identify is just as someone who makes stuff. When I started actually making the work that I consider to be my work proper, the end of graduate school, I was really inspired by everyday things. So my parents are both social workers. They both have a fascination with just looking at the world and thinking how strange and weird it is, and I think I inherited that from them. So early on, I was really into things like found objects or just overheard conversations, things that just existed in the everyday world. One body of work of mine is this billboard project called Are You Here? While that was inspired by things when you're on a highway and you see the map that says you are here, and my background in existential literature says am I here? What does that mean? I created an installation in 2016 that was called Hiding, and that was really inspired by political events at the time and the idea of having to hide. And my background is Jewish, and so there's a lot of information in my DNA about the idea of having to hide from certain things. And right now, my work is inspired by the piece that I'm working on right now is inspired by the experience of COVID, and the early isolation and fear of COVID. I also just have my own take on the world that is, certain things spark interest in me that might not in someone else. So, we're all unique in that way, I guess. The importance of art is that it's hopefully the best situation. Somebody sees something, and then when they go outside after having seen it, they see things slightly differently. I have an artist book that's every class picture I've ever had of me, right? So from preschool through senior and high school. And while, that's totally about me, the goal is it makes them think about their own lives, reflect back, and just that little triggering of making somebody see their life or their world around them in any kind of a different way, that's my goal. Advice for young artists. I think it's all about community as artists, community as people, just community in general. And then I think the other thing is you have to embrace failure, and it's really important to allow yourself to make bad things and learn from it.